All right, back on the Young Turks. So, a little later in the program, Obama counterattacks, and Fareed Zakaria backs him up, saying libs need to grow up. I will bite his nose off. Proverbially, of course. He's got me loaded up, man. I'm coming for him. All right, now, before we go on to Rick Perry, one more quick note, and it's to go back to Ron Paul. Now, Ron Paul did really well in the straw poll in Iowa. As I told you, he does really well in all these straw polls because his group is so determined. They might not be as large as some of the other groups, but they are certainly much more active, right? Now, there's, you might say, hey, that's needlessly putting them down. And I'm not trying to do that. Look, he's won a number of these straw polls already, so he's being taken more legitimately. I like that. Now, let me give you a sense of why a lot of people in the media have been, but I'm also trying to keep it real, right? If I thought Ron Paul was going to win Iowa or was going to win the primary overall, that would be amazing. And I'd tell you in a second, I got no problems with it. But I think a lot of other people in the media do have a problem with Ron Paul. And it has nothing to do with his other positions, which are very interesting. Getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan, which doesn't fit Republican ideology. Gay rights, which doesn't fit Republican ideology. But, he's very pro-life, and he's been emphasizing that lately to gain credibility with social conservatives. He's been against the Federal Reserve, et cetera, et cetera. So some of these are iconoclastic and a little different, right? But apparently the Republican electorate is beginning to respond to it, and at even significantly greater levels than they did in 2008. But I think the thing that really throws the mainstream media for a loop is when he goes after the banks and he goes after the Federal Reserve. And, he thinks the Federal Reserve is illegitimate, et cetera. And that, if you want, in the corporate media, there's not a bigger. Okay, so they're like, yeah, that guy looking to undermine the banks, fringe candidate, not having it. Okay, so, and look, I don't, on a lot of those issues, on half of it, the auditing of the Fed, I love what Ron Paul did. When it comes to his ultimate view on getting rid of the Federal Reserve in its entirety and going back to the gold standard, honestly, I think that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But it is interesting, and it's certainly interesting what he's doing in the race. One more thing that I do agree with Ron Paul on, Mitt Romney said at the end of last week that corporations are people. Ron Paul disagrees, and there's an interesting twist to this story. I'll tell you about that after the video.
Real quick question for you. What did you make of Mitt Romney's statements that corporations are people yesterday?
Well, obviously, they're not. People are individuals, they're not groups, and they're not companies. Individuals have rights, and not those things are, they're not collective. And you can't, duck that. So individuals should be responsible for corporation, but they shouldn't be a new creature, so to speak. So the rights and obligations should be always back to the individual.
Look, it's so obvious, such common sense, but apparently lacking in the Republican leader at this point, Mitt Romney. He said, as to whether, if you couldn't quite hear it there, as to whether they're corporations are people, said, quote, obviously they're not. People are individuals. They're not groups, and they're not companies. Of course! And by the way, I don't want anybody to misinterpret. I think going back to the gold standard and some of the views that Ron Paul has on basically interest rates and how much you'd have to pay for a house, car, et cetera, I think that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. His attacks on the Federal Reserve are at least 80% legitimate. The twist in the story, Rand Paul was the first guy to go back up Mitt Romney, saying, oh, of course corporations are people. They're some of my top contributors. He didn't add that last part, but it's definitely what's going on. And I love that his dad straightened him out on this. I'd love to see that fight over the Thanksgiving table. Anyway, so now we go on to Rick Perry. Well, Rick Perry is getting into the race. He declared on Saturday. And so we've looked into his background on some of the policies and also just flat out fun stuff in Rick Perry's life. Let's start with the fun stuff, then we'll get to the policies. It turns out Rick Perry, of course, governor of Texas, longest serving governor of Texas, longest current serving governor in the country. Right now, everybody knows this. He even sounds a lot like the former governor of Texas, George W. Bush, who also, of course, became president. But apparently his history is also similar. Did you know that Rick Perry was also a cheerleader in college? He was part of what they called an Aggie Yell leader at Texas A&M. So now when you see the pictures of his outfit, you know, you can call him anything you like, but that dude's a cheerleader. Okay, well, that's the cadet picture. You got that's George Bush. Oh, you don't have it's this one right here. All right, there you go. That's one of them. All right, so there you have my friend Rick Perry being a Yell leader in that lovely little vest that he's got. Okay, so now apparently he was also a bit of a goofball, meaning that he liked to do pranks. And I got nothing wrong with pranks. In fact, his first one I think is really funny. Apparently he spent a lot of time thinking about how he can get one of the toilets at Texas A&M to blow up. Okay, so he finally devised a tactic in which you can flush an M80 down a second floor toilet, and it actually comes out the first floor toilet and blows up on the guy that's sitting on the toilet, okay? And he realized because the M80s had waterproof detonators, okay? And that the way that the plumbing was at A&M, it would actually flush down to the first floor. And they did it, and him and his buddies say that it basically blew the guy off the seat. You know what? That sounds kind of funny. I hope the guy didn't get hurt, but you know me, I'm in favor of fun, I'm in favor of pranks, so it seems like he might have put a little too much time into it, but they had fun. And as his friend who organized it with him said, it was, quote, quite a hoot. Does sound like a hoot. Here might be an issue. He had such a hoot doing pranks like that that apparently he did not have much time for grades and for schoolwork, because here are some of his grades that are just leaked. First of all, he was on academic probation. In U.S. history, he received a C. Interesting for a guy running for president. Shakespeare was a D, that is not surprising. Principle of economics, fairly important for someone running for president, D. But my favorite, he got a C in gym. How do you get a C in gym, man? Go shag a fly ball, man. Go do something, hit a layup. C, geez, Lord mercy. He got a D in veterinary anatomy, which is a problem because he was an animal science major. And furthermore, he got an F in organic chemistry and a C in animal breeding. That, unfortunately, is what led him to become governor, because he wanted to be a veterinarian, but his grades were disastrous. So they're like, look, you got an F in organic chemistry, let alone the veterinary anatomy where you got the D. That's supposed to be your major. Son, the only thing you're good for is BSing people and blowing people up on toilet seats and cheerleading. Hey, you know what? You'd be a great politician. And it turned out they were kind of right. So I wish he'd done better in school so we wouldn't have to deal with him now. So that is his background, which is funny. And now let's go on to the substance, okay? So Rick Perry's policy proposals are outlined in a book called Fed Up, Our Fight to Save America from Washington. And when you look at what he proposes, boy, it's both amazing and quite frightening. First of all, on Social Security, he says Social Security is by far the best example of a program, quote, violently tossing aside any respect for our founding principles. Wow. This guy's running for president and doesn't believe that Social Security is constitutional and shouldn't exist. You're going to win with that campaign? Okay. I'm interested to see how that happens. Well, at least we'll get to find out what Republicans think of Social Security. Because if he sticks to what he wrote in his book and says Social Security shouldn't be around, can he even win in a Republican primary? I'd be really surprised. Because Social Security doesn't poll well among Democrats and independents alone. It polls well everybody, including Republicans. All right, it's not just Social Security, also Medicare. He said that to include prescription drugs in 2003, it was an example in Medicare and expanding it of an irresponsible culture of spending in Washington. Now, at the same time, he says President Obama going after what he considers going after Medicare and his health care proposal is, quote, frightening, scheme, and that it undermines freedom. So which one is it? Well, apparently he's got mixed views on Medicare, but definitely Social Security is unconstitutional. But we're going to get back to the unconstitutional issue in a second on Medicare because he's not done with it yet. But now let's turn to financial regulation. You're going to be shocked to find out. Turns out Rick Perry thinks almost all financial regulation is unconstitutional. Now, let's take the SEC in this case. He says the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, is part of a federal alphabet soup in which undemocratic, unelected Washington bureaucrats are now dubiously empowered to dictate their own preferences to the American people. Well, look, if you don't have a SEC, there are no cops on Wall Street. So then you could do any insider trading you like. So people who have their pensions, for example, in the stock market, they'd be at a massive disadvantage to people who were doing insider trading. So Bob calls up, John at the bank and says, oh, but my stock's about to go up or it's about to go down. You trade accordingly. They make billions and you get screwed because you didn't know that was happening. I mean, that is one of a million examples I can give you of why we should regulate Wall Street. It's not overdue regulation. In fact, we've way underdone regulation on Wall Street. That's why it blew up in 2007 and 2008 in the first place. If it's up to Rick Perry, we wouldn't regulate them at all. There'd be no cops on Wall Street whatsoever, only the crooks. That's it. I can't, look, on that alone, it would destroy the country. So, but he's not done yet. Here we go again on all the things that he finds to be unconstitutional. Again, this is from his own book. And Matt Iglesias did a great job of summarizing this. And that's where I'm getting a lot of this information. This is from page 51. He's very specific. Federal laws regulating the environment, regulating guns, protecting civil rights, establishing the massive programs and Medicare and Medicaid, creating national minimum wage laws, and establishing national labor laws. All of those are of dubious constitutionality. Doesn't believe they're all constitutional at all. So they're all out the window. What's left? Does he think the government should do anything? Does he think the government should exist? Well, remember, he wanted, or he at least alluded to Texas seceding from the United States, so obviously he does not have a very healthy view of the federal government that he is now looking to run. But this borders on anarchy. And then just one final funny one, because you can go on all day long quoting this book and the amazing, ridiculous ideas in it. It turns out there is not global warming. Al Gore is wrong. Now, did Rick Perry talk to scientists? No, he just looked around and he says, quote, we've been experiencing a cooling trend. But wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Even if you don't think it's man-made, it is an absolute verifiable fact that the planet has been warming. Even Fox News admits that part. I saw Steve Doocy say it the other day on Fox and Friends. But Rick Perry's like, nope, I don't believe in reality. You call it warming, I call it cooling. Take that, Al Gore. That's Rick Perry, and it's dangerous. So now, as the days go on, I got a couple more stories. Well, if I did Rick Perry's policy proposals, it'd take the rest of the show. But I got a couple more for you that I want to share with you tomorrow because they're interesting and amazing. But now let's get to a fun political aspect of the Rick Perry entry. That is the reaction of the other candidates to Rick Perry. So we start with Mitt Romney. He's not too happy that Rick Perry's in the race because that guy's a legitimate threat to the front runner, which is Mitt Romney. So here's Romney taking a couple of jabs at Perry. He says, I think understanding how the economy works by having worked in the real economy is finally essential in the White House, and I hope people recognize that. In other words, Rick Perry, who's been in government now for nearly 26 years, doesn't understand how the real economy works. He went on to say, Romney did, I respect other people in the race, but I think the only other person that has that kind of extensive private sector experience besides me in the Republican race is Herman Cain. And I respect Herman Cain, but I also think it's helpful to have that government experience that I've had. In other words, I don't respect him that much either. But hey, if you're going to compare me to anyone, compare me to the guy who has no chance of winning, Herman Cain. Okay, so we're going to find out how Rick Perry handles criticism like this because he immediately responded. Now, it's not surprising that Romney would throw a couple of kidney punches, but it's perfectly normal, and he's attacking him for his record. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a low blow or anything. Now, when Pawlenty was given a chance to hit Romney, he did not do it. Rick Perry apparently does not play that way. He likes to hit back. So when asked about these comments, Rick Perry first said, quote, I'm thinking Texas is the real economy. First of all, I love it. This guy's an awesome goofball, man. We're going to have great fun with this guy. Hey, you never worked in the real economy because you didn't work in a business. Hey, you know what? Texas is a real economy. Read it on the tweeter. Okay, but he's not backing down at all. And he continues by saying, running a state is different from running a business. Take a look at his record when he was governor. Take a look at my record when I was governor. Now, what Perry's referring to there is Mitt Romney, when he was governor of Massachusetts, Massachusetts was ranked 47th out of 50 among the states in job creation. Oops. Now, Rick Perry, it calls job creation in Texas the Texas miracle. There's a lot of problems with that. But the fact is, Texas has had a decent job creation in context of the other states in this terrible economy. So that's what he's bragging about. Now, of course, that's what he's going to brag about. Now, other candidates will say, hey, it was mainly minimum wage jobs. The Obama administration is saying, yeah, there's oil in Texas, and oil did great as the rest of us suffered. Those are all fair points. But he's saying, hey, look at my record versus Romney's. I mean, he came to play. First thing Romney does is he throws a kidney punch, and Perry's like, yeah, that's cool. Whoa, boom. Who thought I'd be acting out boxing here? Fun for everybody. Okay, so he immediately comes with a roundhouse. And then as he's leaving, this is the part I love. He says, give my love, and blows a couple of kisses at the camera. Give him my love. I'll see him on the tweeter. Here comes Rick Perry. Oh, this race is going to be fun.
And you can always follow me on Twitter.
Absolutely right. These guys are going to rip each other to shreds. Huckabee over the weekend was talking about, he's like, oh, Perry's going to come into Romney's house. He's like, you don't know Romney. I know Romney. Romney's going to come at him, right? But look at Perry, man. He's like, oh, is that the best you got? Send him my love. That's going to be a fight, man. And then Bachman's going to jump off the top rope, and Ron Paul's in there doing like shenanigans, cutting people's, Achilles heel. All of a sudden they fall down. I don't know, man. Today I got energized. Can you tell? Oh, this Republican primary is going to be fantastic. This Rick Perry guy is unreal. Okay, let me give you one more story in this segment, and then we'll talk about the counterattack, Free Zachariah, etc. It is about President Obama. So I said last week that President Obama was in trouble and didn't realize how much trouble he was in. In fact, I thought he had hit his tipping point. In fact, I wrote a blog called Obama's Tipping Point. Let me read you the very last paragraph in that blog. It said, if the clever guys at the White House don't realize they've hit their tipping point, they're in for a rude awakening when that tsunami washes over them. They're headed into the 30s in the polls, and I don't think they have any clue how to get out of there. They don't even know that they're about to hit an iceberg. They think they're just one more compromise from turning the corner. Guess what happened today? Obama hit 39% in a Gallup poll. All right, you got to understand something. When I wrote this 6 days ago, I got so many comments, people saying, oh, Obama's not going in the 30s. You're crazy, dog. You're crazy. He's not going into the 30s. No, Obama's got this thing figured out. The economy's going to improve. We're going to have more jobs. He's not going to go down. He's going to go up. And the Republicans look crazy in comparison, so he'll look fantastic. It didn't even take a week for him to hit the 30s. Look, the guys on the other side might be crazy, and I think they are. I think they're dingbats. I think the country would be in tremendous trouble if we handed it off to any of the Republicans in that field, okay? But at the same time, that doesn't mean that people think Barack Obama's doing a good job. He's actually got to go earn people's votes. And he just keeps saying, well, I'm not as bad as them. Well, that ain't going to do it, man. That's why your approval rating's in the 30s. You've got to have actual jobs plan. You've got to actually have something where people can go, oh, yes, that's what I'm in favor of. What I'm in Look, here, you know what? I'm going to go to his counterattack because it's so bad. Today, Associated Press writes about President Obama doing a rare direct attack against the Republicans. I was like, oh, really? Direct attack? All right, let's see what he's got. Here's quote number one. Referring to the Republican plan, quote, that's just not common sense. Ooh, zinger! He got him. Stinging attack. All right. So what do you have to do instead, President Obama? Okay, now he's going to let him have it. Quote number two. You need to take a balanced approach. Whoa, take it easy on him, B. You're killing him, man. A balanced approach. They won't recover from that one. All right, well, he's not done yet. Now, he's talking about Mitt Romney, and this is what the Associated Press called it. He took, quote, he took a hard shot at Mitt Romney. I'm like, okay, hard shot. Here we go. All right, go get him. We got to get up those ratings and go bring those other guys down. What do you got? Quote, you've got a governor who's running for president right now who's instituted the same exact thing in Massachusetts, referring to his own health care plan. This used to be a Republican idea. It's like suddenly they've got amnesia. So he hit Romney hard by saying, ha, I copied Romney's plan, and it was a Republican idea that I gave you. You see how bad Romney is? That's why I copied him? Ooh, hard attack against Romney. You see what I'm talking about? He doesn't know how to play hardball. Like this is, and I don't know why the media covers it the way they want him to cover it. Like his handlers tell the media, oh no, watch out today. Today's going after Romney. It's going after the Republicans. They're okay, so they write, okay, going after Republicans, hard hit Romney. But when you look at the actual quotes, he's like, oh, let me tell you how much I love Romney's plan. That's why I did the same exact thing when I was president. That's not going hard after Romney. That's agreeing with Romney. That's not putting together progressive proposals. That's saying, I'm proud that I did Republican ideas. If he keeps going like this, he's going to lose, man. And now I'm worried he might lose badly. You can't run for president and your hardest hit is that ideas was so great, I copied it. But don't get me wrong, I know why he's doing it. Again, they think they're so clever. It's third grade stuff. He's doing it so that Romney won't win the primary. Ha, Romney agrees with Obama, and hence you shouldn't vote for Romney in the primary. Yeah, but what if he does win the primary? He's right now still the overwhelming favorite. And then in the general election, you're going to have to run against the guy saying, I loved his ideas. I thought they were genius. And finally, look, it's the general tenor of the whole thing, man. When's the last time Obama said, these some of them bitches are destroying us. They've ruined the middle class. And all they want to do is help the rich. He never says that. Instead, he keeps saying, I borrowed all the Republican ideas. Why won't they like me? I'm for balance and common sense. Did I hit him? Well, if you were trying to hit him, that was an enormous miss. Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. I can't, Cenk and Anna, I can't let it go. One more thing about Fareed Zakaria. Okay, we did it at the end of the last hour, and this guy comes in with his attitude about how liberals aren't grown up, and all the grown-ups are the centrist, pragmatic people in Washington. Look, that guy is so smart in so many ways, but he's so wrong. It's amazing because he thinks that, hey, look, Obama can't get anything done. There's opposition. But Bush got the Iraq war started when that made no sense whatsoever. And you know who agreed with him, by the way? Fareed Zakaria, who later apologized for being so damn wrong about Iraq. Yeah, look, next time when liberals criticize Washington policy, you might want to think twice and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I should respect that opinion instead of being a smug ass. We're like, oh, you children. I know so much better than you, even though I've been wrong on almost every issue. It's the smugness that gets under my skin. All right, you keep being wrong and see how that works out for you. By the way, it'll work out great for you. You get a lot of money that way. Mm-hmm. On television, I'm sure he's getting paid a lot to be that wrong week in and week out. Okay. Look, again, he's not my least favorite guy at all. There's a lot of things that he's smart about. But the insistence that the Republicans are always right and that there's nothing that could be done is pathetic. It's for losers. And Republicans. I don't know which one he is. Okay. We move forward. I do have a fun announcement. Okay. By the way, Anna's like, before we got started, she's like, you sure you're all right, Uger?
You can tell when he's in a bad mood because you're quiet, you don't make eye contact with anyone, you just look off into space.
If you're thinking about how I'm going to bite Zakaria's nose off, as I said earlier. Okay, I'm not angry on a personal level. Like I said, I'm in a great mood personally. Right. It's just they get me worked up. All right, listen, here's what's happening. On Wednesday, we will be taking questions from Facebook. All right, special live at 8 o'clock Eastern. What you can do is you can go to our Facebook page, obviously, facebook.com/TYT Nation, and write us some questions. You can write it ahead of time, And then also, while we're live, we'll have people checking the Facebook page for questions that come, and we will be answering them. So fun for everybody. You could be political questions. It could be questions about the show. It could be any damn question you like. Doesn't mean we're going to take it, but I guarantee you, unlike other shows, we'll take some fun and crazy and wild and, once again, fun questions.
Yes.
But that's not all, Anna.
On Thursday, we're going to answer questions that you post on Twitter, and we're going to do it live, just like on Wednesday with Facebook.
Or as Rick Perry would say, on the tweeter.
On Tweeter.
We'll see you on the tweeter. Okay, we'll also start taking questions on Twitter right now, but Twitter is so live that obviously we'll be very much watching it at 8 o'clock Eastern and have those questions forwarded to us obviously here as we answer them live. And by the way, use the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag AskTYT. AskTYT. Okay? We'd love to hear from you guys, so looking forward to it.
We love interacting with you guys, so I can't wait to see what your questions are.
Yes, absolutely. You ask a question, and then we interact with you. I understand that's what the new media is all about. We interact. Now, look, we do it all the time, informally. Like, I'll answer questions on the Twitter, and I'll go on Facebook, Anna goes on Facebook. We all do, right? But why not do it a little bit more organized and do a little fun thing? Live at 8 o'clock, Facebook Wednesday, Twitter on Thursday. Go.
Tweeter.
All right.
All right, let's do some stories. There are a total of 9 convicted felons in Cook County, Illinois, that have actually been found to be innocent under new DNA testing.
Oh, fantastic. So I'm sure they're out of prison now, right?
Except, no, they're not out of prison. They're still in prison, and they have not been exonerated yet. It turns out that attorneys for Cook County are kind of brushing this new DNA evidence under the table, under the rug. They want to, downplay the new DNA evidence that would basically prove their innocence.
Well, of course they would. I mean, as prosecutors, your job is to ascertain and fight for the truth, not to fight for prosecution. In fact, if you think someone is not guilty, then you make sure that you do not prosecute them. Look, that is what every prosecutor is told. I've worked just in the summers at a couple of prosecutors' office, and that's the first thing they tell you. Unless, of course, you really care about your record and how well you're doing and what's your wins and losses. And so if it's inconvenient that you've got some people who happen to be innocent that you put away, well, why not let them rot there for a couple more years as you try to figure out when you could delay their release? Because they're only innocent, and you only charge them with rape, so it's not that big a deal, right?
Rape and murder. Some of them have already served 20 years in prison for a crime that they did not commit. Now, there are 2 different cases involved in this story, okay? The first case involves the rape and murder of 14-year-old Kateresa Matthews, and this happened 20 years ago. 3 men are still serving time in prison for this crime, which they did not commit. The second case is involving the rape and murder of Nina Glover from the 1990s, and 5 people are currently serving time for that rape and murder, and DNA evidence did find that they are not guilty of that. They are innocent. Now, there are 2 different problems here, okay? Of course, there are the people that are serving time in prison right now that are innocent. DNA evidence proves that they're innocent, but it doesn't matter. They're still in jail, right? But the reason why this was able to happen in the first place is because of the fact that police enforcement basically coerced them into confessing to a crime that they did not commit.
Right, so let's talk about that. Look, DNA is not the only evidence. And in the beginning, they already had doubts about the DNA in some of these cases going forward, right? Right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. But they had confessions. So you could actually say, hey, you know what? You got a confession. That's excellent evidence, so it makes sense. But now the DNA proves it was not their semen. It was somebody else's semen. And in fact, one of them is a semen that matches a serial killer already in prison who did very similar crimes, okay? It's not them. It's one thing to prosecute wrong in the beginning. It's another thing not to admit it as they're still sitting in prison when it is unbelievably obvious. Now, the second part of this is what you're alluding to, which makes you then go back in hindsight and go, maybe confessions are not as great evidence as we thought they were.
You know, just to give you an example of how sad this story is, one of the police officers that got the confession for the Kateresa Matthews case, right? He was involved in 5 other cases where he got confessions from people who did not commit the crime. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, you look back and you look at the evidence and you look at this guy's history and you realize, okay, he's obviously doing something. He's coercing these people into admitting to crimes that they did not commit. So what are the consequences for that guy? Who knows?
Probably a promotion. So, look, when I was a young child, I thought confessions were rock solid. The guy says, I did it. Well, then obviously who would admit to doing a rape and a murder when they didn't do a rape and a murder? That seemed crazy to me. Well, now that I've grown up, I put childish things aside. It turns out it happens all the time. Whether you think it makes sense or not, whether you think it's logical or not, there is an overwhelming mountain of evidence that it happens all the time. Now, I do not go as far as others saying, oh, then, hey, we can't pressure these guys, et cetera, et cetera. No, look, you get confessions through pressure. And those confessions are incredibly important in putting away a lot of guilty people, okay? So, but we do have to find some degree of balance here. And we have to look at it with a little bit more critical eye and say, hey, under certain circumstances, those confessions might not be as good evidence as you think. There is an element of coercion that we have to be careful about, not because we feel bad for the defendant, not bad because we feel bad for the guy who did the crime. It's because we feel bad for the innocent guys who didn't do the crime and gave a coerced confession, as you see in this case.
20 years of their lives behind bars, and they're still serving time, even after DNA evidence proves that they're guilty. Can you imagine that?
You thought the Fareed Zacharias story made me angry. Imagine I'm sitting in prison for 20 years for something I didn't do, and everybody thinks that you're a killer and a rapist of a 14-year-old girl, and then if you finally got the evidence, it's 100% not you, and they keep you in jail for a couple more years. I mean, how do you, it is a minor miracle that they have not acted with great degree of violence.
And again, this is another perfect example of why the death penalty wouldn't work. Can you imagine if they were sentenced to death for this? For the rape and murder. I mean, it's very easy to be sentenced to death for rape and murder.
Yeah, it's of a 14-year-old especially.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as bad as it gets, right? And thank God they weren't executed. So I'm sure they'll be out of prison in another decade or so. Look, Anna, you wonder about my bad mood. And the stories get me worked up, right? Your hour gets me angrier than my hour.
All right, just calm down.
Okay? Because, every day she's in here with the union people that worked all their lives, got screwed, and then the education's screwed, which we're going to get to in a second.
Right.
Okay, and the guys in prison are screwed. All right.
We have fun later, though. We do, I swear.
Okay,
I swear.
all right. But look, we got to give you the reality. That's what we do. We keep it real, okay? And I know everybody's been saying, hey, I claim that I've got an answer for this stuff and that we could fight back on this. And I keep saying soon, and I got General Joan Roach writing me emails saying, I've had enough with soon. Tell me what the hell it is. Now, right? I hear you. Just less than a month. I got to cross some T's and dot some I's, but we're coming for them. Don't worry. All right.
Staff Sergeant Jared Hageman committed suicide just a few weeks ago after his 8th deployment in war, and he was going to return back to Afghanistan for his 9th deployment, but before he could do that, he actually killed himself. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this story up is because his wife is claiming that it wasn't an accident, he did commit suicide, and she gives the reasons why in this following video. Let's watch.
Mary Corkhill Kirkland lost her son Derek to suicide more than a year ago.
Other video, apparently.
Other video.
It was just horrible. And he would just cry.
Ashley Hageman says her husband Jared tried to come to grips with what he'd seen and done on 8 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan and told her
that there's no way that any God would forgive him, that he was going to hell. He couldn't live with that anymore.
Ashley says her Army Ranger husband wanted out of the military.
He just wanted to know what it felt like to be normal again.
He had orders to return to Afghanistan this month. Instead, on June 28th, Ashley says her husband took a gun and shot himself in the head on base. She claims the Rangers never took his pleas for help seriously.
There's no way that they should have not been able to pick up on it when he's telling them, he's reaching out.
Yeah, but he only did 8 tours, so obviously they'd have to resend him in for another tour because Afghanistan is going so swimmingly and we're about to win, so I can see why you wanted to send him on his 9th tour. Part of the reason we do this, of course, is we have a volunteer army and our politicians don't want to, risk actually getting voters angry, so they just use the volunteers and they say, well, don't worry, we can fight a war without you having any problems at all. You just sit at home and eat potato chips and watch football, and that guy will go on his 9th deployment and he'll be just fine. Second part of that you get out of that story, obviously, he did some things he felt he shouldn't have done.
Exactly.
I mean, when a guy says he thinks he's going to hell and that there's no way out of it for what he's done, you think that all those wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are perfectly lovely and we don't kill any innocent people, we don't kill any underage people, we just, every time we get the bad guys and we rock? Well, that's apparently not what he thought. Look, I read a story at the end of last week about how one former defense official, I believe it was, a former intelligence official, was bragging about, look, in those night raids that we do in Afghanistan, we get the right target 50% of the time.
That's unbelievable. I recently read an article about drone attacks and how 1 in 5 drone attacks in Pakistan, I believe it is, results in the death of children, like civilians, just innocent children. And, you know, look, we talk about casualties of war all the time, right? We talk about how all of these wars are eating away at our federal budget, how horrible it is. But here's another aspect of it that people don't look into enough. You know, the mental health that's being sacrificed by all of these soldiers. You know, ever since the wars began, 1,000 people in the U.S. military committed suicide. Suicide. Like,
right.
And what's happening? You know, the answer is always, oh, let's med them up. Let's put them on medications. Let's put them on drugs. Let's do what we can to, you know, decrease the number of people with post-traumatic stress disorder. But it's not that easy. We're fighting this war that doesn't make any sense. And, you know, all of these people are not only risking their lives, you know, in the line of battle or whatever, but they're also risking their mental health and their well-being.
And by the way, so you know, of course there's suicides everywhere, but the rate of suicide for people that coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan is far greater than the rate of the general population.
Yes.
And not only that, they have a lot of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. The chemicals in their brains have actually literally been changed, and so that leads to sometimes depression and then sometimes suicide as well. And it turns out there's only so many, you know, IEDs going off underneath you that you can take. But luckily it's all for a good cause because we're about to win in Afghanistan. That's what I hear from the Obama administration. One more thing. It takes a special kind of person to be president. And I said this a little after Obama got elected, and I had read about a drone strike. And I said something that's, you know, you might find surprising. I don't know if I'd want that job. I don't know if I could do that job, right? Because those drone strikes, they kill innocent people all the time. Mm-hmm. And sometimes kids, as Anna pointed out, right? And you got to push the button, right? Or maybe you say, I'm not pushing the button because I'm not interested in killing civilians, no matter what deadly terrorist you're telling me about. But then you will get clobbered, okay? In real world politics, Obama, you know Obama, he would never, ever, ever contemplate that. Oh, I'm stopping drone strikes because it kills some innocent people. The Republicans would decimate him and he couldn't possibly imagine. But to me, I order a drone strike, even if we hit a terrorist, which a lot of times we don't, right? And a lot of times we just hit terrorists. It's all across the board. It's not just purely a bad thing. And I get the value of drone strikes, okay? Which a lot of you might disagree with, but I think that there is value in them, right? But even if you hit a terrorist and you happen to kill 3 or 5 or 7 civilians and 2 of them were teenagers, you got to go through the rest of your life thinking, I ended those people's lives, right, and they were innocent. That's a hell of a thing to live with, man.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, consumer borrowing is up. Is that good for the economy? We'll talk about that.
Oh, boy.